Welcome to another episode of Relentlessly Resilient, where real people share real life experiences and the tools they've developed to move forward and live their best life. I'm Michelle Scharf.
And I am Jennie Taylor. And today, Michelle, I am so excited to have with us another Gold Star widow. So for anyone who doesn't know what that means her husband was also killed in action while serving in the military. And this woman is someone I admire and love and have so much to learn from and look up to. Her name is Jane Horton. Hi, Jane.
Hi, Jennie.
And I'm not lying when I say I met this woman walking the halls of Congress. Like, that sounds so made up, but shortly after my husband died, our local Congressman Rob Bishop invited me to come be his guest at the State of the Union in, it was actually February that year, and that would have been 2019, and I'm in D.C. going, oh my gosh, I'm literally walking the halls of Congress, and I met this beautiful woman who was standing by a whole bunch of generals in the halls, and she came over to me, and she says, I'm so glad you're here, and we've got to talk, and I'm so sorry about your husband, I followed your story, and we've got so much work to do. And I'm looking at her going, I don't even know who you are. But I will tell you, meeting her has, I'm not exaggerating, changed my life for the good. Like, in that moment, she is not only another Gold Star widow that can help me because she's walked a lot of this path that I'm now walking, but she is a fighter, not just for herself, but for anyone else that's facing what we as military widows face. She has worked in Afghanistan at the embassy. She's traveled to Afghanistan several times since her husband was killed in 2011. And her latest job was senior advisor to the Secretary of Defense at the Pentagon on a presidential appointment. So, I mean, this woman is making huge difference in the lives of so many military families. And Jane, I love you. You've given me so much courage. You've given me so much awareness. I didn't even know what I didn't know before I met you. And my sister and I talk about you all the time, how much if I'm intimidated by something I have to do in life or something feels overwhelming or scary, we just think, what would Jane do? Well, what would Jane do? How would Jane handle this? And you are just that role model to me and a dear friend. I love you. I'm grateful I got to see you recently when you stopped by Utah for a few days. But anyway, now I'm talking way too much about how much I love you. We're going to let the listeners all fall in love with you too. So Jane, can you introduce us to you and your husband, Chris, and kind of give us a little backstory of where you met, how you met, what life was looking like, when that was? Take us back in time a little while.
Absolutely. First of all, Jennie and Michelle, thank you so much for having me on. I'm so humbled to be a part of this and so in awe of your resilience. And thank you for saying so many kind things about me, but you are my personal hero, Jennie.
No, you're sweet, Jane.
A little bit. So I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. I was the youngest of 3 kids. I have an older brother and sister. And right out of high school, I moved to Australia for a year and did a character building program over there where I lived with the Aboriginals and did some pretty awesome life-changing things. I then had a college scholarship to go to this tiny little Christian school in Nyack, New York. And I just felt like God was telling me, hey, you're not supposed to go there anymore. Like, look online, see what you can find, and I have something better for you. And it was kind of crazy because here I am living in Australia. And so I started searching online and I found this school called the King's College. It's this tiny little school in the Empire State Building. And they wanted to raise up leaders to get involved in key levels of government and society. And I was like, this is where I'm supposed to go. I told my family, they thought I was nuts. My mom actually went and visited the school for me, and I just knew that was where I was going. And I had a little conversation with God in my head, and I was like, God, I know this is where I'm supposed to be, but it would be great if you can give me a sign. And so lo and behold, the following Sunday, one of the professors from this teeny school spoke at the church in Australia.
No way. You've never told me that before.
Oh, okay. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good sign. Yeah, thanks, God. I got that. Memo taken.
Yeah, I got it. So I ended up going to the school and ended up meeting this young demagogue. I'll call him a little bit of a rabble-rouser in college, Chris. He, did a lot of work in politics and was hiring a lot of the students to work for the mayor, was beyond his years wise, beyond his years smart, and I was just kind of mesmerized by him. So we were friends for a couple of years. We both leave the school. We only ended up going there for a year. And I moved to Hawaii. And so Chris and he used to always reach out to me on AOL Instant Messenger. Now I feel really old.
Isn't that so awesome? Did you have a MySpace page at the same time?
Yeah, probably MySpace pages as well. Who knows? But before we even had cell phones, I don't know.
Yeah, so awesome.
Yes, and so we started talking about politics, the 2008 election, and we would talk almost every for hours. And I remember being a little freaked out, and I was like, I have to go, like the sun is coming up. and 2 months later we were engaged. Like, we just knew. It was very quick. I love you. It was very quick. We just knew. And his family was very surprised. I was very surprised. Chris, nobody thought was getting married till he was like 40. And we were 22 and 23.
Yeah, that's young.
And so, yes. And the way I knew he loved me is he sold all of his guns to buy my engagement ring.
Whoa, that's serious. Huge. Like, you're talking to a very Second Amendment friendly state here in Utah. So, Jane, that's serious love.
That's huge.
Yeah, there's no going back on that.
Nope. And he was a professional shooter, so he loved his firearms. So we got engaged. I moved to Oklahoma, packed up all my stuff, moved out there, and he went off to basic training. He was actually recruited to go into the Army to be on something called Team AMU, which is Army Marksmanship Unit. And they usually go to the Olympics for the Army. They're the best of the best, and they're just kind of this amazing team. And so he decided, I want to serve my country during wartime, but I'm not going to do this team. I'm going to use my skills and become a sniper. So went to sniper school, graduated at the top of his class. And he was excited. He wanted to go on his first deployment. And it's hard to explain that to people sometimes, but it's just like a fireman in his first fire, or a dancer in their first concert, or a surgeon giving his first surgery. Our warfighters are trained to go overseas, and they are ready and willing to go. And so he was ready to go, and we had no question he was coming home. He also won all the top awards for the state. He won there was this match every year called the Governor's 20 in Oklahoma. And he was the first novice to go in and beat all the veterans. And then he taught the person that won it the following year. That's how good he was.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Kind of an overachiever. I love it.
Yes, he was very good. So he also owned his own private security company. And he did some political consulting as well. But we knew he'd be fine. He was the best of the best. And we also knew that, that God would protect him, which is a totally different story that we could talk about later.
And you had a lot of life ahead of you. Like, there's clearly big things for you two to do. Like, you've got mountains to move. There's no question you need a lot of years to get all that done.
Yep. And he was like, it's going to be a long year, but I'll be fine, and I'll see you in a year. And he was excited to go. And so I moved to Washington, D.C. that summer from Oklahoma, and I was an intern for Senator Jim Inhofe, who was the ranking member of the Armed Services Committee, which has oversight into the Pentagon. And so I worked actually in his military department. They call it his war room. And they used to ask me every day, how's your husband doing? How's your husband doing? And Senator Inhofe actually used to go to Afghanistan about every 5 to 6 weeks.
Wow.
And yeah, so they were going to go over and actually see Chris. And I remember on June 29th, 2011, I started getting texts from another military spouse. And she was like, did you hear, we had 2 killed? And I didn't really know much about the deployment at all. I wasn't told really anything. I wasn't told how dangerous it would be. And so we had our first 2 killed in action in June. And so it was one after the other until September 9th, 2011, when I was home in Oklahoma. I got my knock at the door.
Okay, well, we're going to pause you right there. So when did they leave on the deployment? When did they first get over in theater? Do you remember?
Beginning of June 2011.
So they're over there and right away having casualties, having fatalities.
Yep, we lost 14 in 2 months.
Oh my gosh, Jane, I can't. Okay, we're going to take a break here for a minute because I feel like that's a lot to process. And then we're going to bring back, I want you to take us back to your door, that front door, that knock on the door that nobody wants because everybody's seen it in a movie and they know that there's no way soldiers come knock on your door just to say hi. So hold on for a second and we'll be right back. All right, and we are back with my dear friend Jane Horton, who has just walked us through this beautiful love story of this amazing man that she met and this great life they were on and amazing things they were both doing. And sounds like Chris just excelled at everything he did. And you said, Jane, that your husband and his National Guard unit deployed to Afghanistan in the summer of 2011. Within that first couple of months, 14 soldiers were dead, that is a lot for one unit. That is a huge lot for one National Guard unit. I mean, that's a state of civilians that throw on a uniform when they're needed. And then you said September 9th, 2011. Take us there, Jane.
Yep. So I was finishing up my college degree. I was in my final semester, and I had gone to college that morning, taken my classes, and actually had another sniper wife over. She was going to teach me how to make these little cakes in a jar that you can bake, and you bake them in such a way that they stay fresh for a couple weeks.
Oh, to send?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It was Chris's birthday coming up, and so she was over, and I remember it was the first and actually the only time I used my KitchenAid mixer. And I remember getting a knock at the door, and I looked at her and made a joke and was like, "We love knocks at the door." And so I went to the door, and there they were, 2 uniformed service members that told me, "Mrs. Horton, we're sorry to inform you that your husband, Specialist Christopher Horton, was killed September 9th. And I remember them telling me the time. I think they said at 4 p.m. from a gunshot wound to the head. And I asked them, how many people were killed and what happened. And, no answers for that for the time being. But I just remember thinking and just knowing, this life is no longer about me. This life is about telling people about my husband that gave his life for his country, and those like Major Brent Taylor that gave their lives for their country. And I knew that was going to be my mission from that day forward.
Wow, I have chills. I have so much
Jane.
chills. I know, Jennie, when you have shared your story, I mean, you very much felt like that was part of your path as well, that you needed to honor Brent, but also in honoring Brent, that you'd honor other military.
Well, I think of this, like, Jane, you think of this amazing man that you've married, and I know you're every bit his equal, if not more amazing. And the great life mission you two were to live together, and then all of a sudden his life is cut so short, not because he was selfish, not because he got drunk and did something stupid, but because he loved his country so much that he gave his life for his country. So I know what that feels like. But but tell us those first couple of weeks. Like what was it like? Tell us if you're comfortable about his funeral. He's buried in Arlington, right? Can you?
Yep.
Most of our listeners have no idea what it's like to get that knock on the door. Fortunately, most have not had a sniper husband killed in action. Get that knock on the door, the burial, the service, the memorials. Can you walk our listeners through a little bit of maybe those first couple of weeks of being a brand new Gold Star widow?
Yeah, absolutely. The first 24 hours alone are just crazy because you have 24 hours before the military releases the name. And so one of the first things that my notification officers did was they sat me down and they were like, your husband filled out his paperwork in such a way that you have to decide how you want his parents to be told. And I was like, what? And they're like, we need to know, you have to make a decision. Do you want to go tell them? Do you want us to tell them? Or do you want to go together?
Oh my gosh.
And
Jane.
so, yeah, I remember just going into my room and calling my sister first. And to be honest, the National Guard had made a mistake earlier when my husband had just deployed about him being in a pretty bad incident where he was injured that he didn't end up being in. So when I told my sister that Chris had been killed, she didn't believe me. And
she's thinking it's another mistake.
I was like, I don't have time to like convince you that my husband's dead. My husband's dead. And so just calling immediate family and telling, my family, like, I need you to be out here now. It was just crazy in and of itself, the way everyone reacted differently. And, it's hard for people to believe that because it's so foreign to Americans in general that the less than 1% that serve go overseas. And then, a teeny tiny portion of those get killed by terrorists overseas. And so I finally, after talking to my sister, I finally just made the decision too. I was like, if my husband put that in his paperwork, I have to tell his parents myself. And so the notification officers drove with me over to my in-laws' house, and Chris's father answered the door, and I just told him, I said, Chris is dead. It was at about 10 p.m. And so he had to go get Chris's mom and tell her, and we had to fill out paperwork. And then we went, and probably the most horrific thing, one of the most horrific things of my entire life was telling Chris's grandmother. So we went over her house after, and she just fell to the floor and cried and cried. And it was horrible. And so, in the first 24 hours, my phone never stopped ringing, and I just had to tell everyone that needed to know before it came out in the media. And so I remember not sleeping that night, and God really gave me an extra level of strength. I knew it wasn't my turn to grieve. This was my time to give my husband the best I had to give him and take care of him the best way I could. And so, it took me years to finally just let that guard down and finally grieve myself. But during those initial stages, I was very much in business mode. My family came out from Ohio and stayed with me. And my brother ended up staying with me for a couple weeks. He would make me dinner. He did everything for me. And, after the first 24 hours, once the name is released, then the military tells you, okay, you have to go to Dover. And I had no clue what Dover was. Dover is where our fallen heroes, where their bodies come back. It's basically a mortuary where we process the remains and where the families go to see something called a dignified transfer, which is when the body comes back to America and they have a ceremony where several service members carry the body basically from an aircraft to a hearse, and they take him to the mortuary. And so the military flies the families from their home to Dover, Delaware. And so that was the next thing I had to do. And it was very much like a whirlwind. And that was probably, I think Dover was probably the most horrific time other than when I flew him to Arlington of my life. It's just surreal. He didn't end up coming in till 5 a.m. And it was this sick feeling. It was this sick feeling of, I can't wait to see my husband. He's finally coming home to America where he belongs. And then this feeling of, but he's dead. And that's all I could think of was that feeling is he's home in America, but he's dead. And so we watched his body come home. And then we flew back. We had to plan his funeral. We had to deal with Westboro Baptist Church protesting his funeral, saying that God hates fallen soldiers, which we all have the same opinion on that. We had to deal with all the funeral arrangements, all these, the military. It's the families and the widow is bombarded with information. What kind of casket do you want? Where do you want to bury him? Here's all your benefits. What do you want to do with this? Who do you want to be at this? And so during that time, I just wanted to give him the best I had. And so I decided to bury him at Arlington National Cemetery. I just knew that's where he should be. And I wrote every senior leader I could. I wrote the Chief of Staff of the Army at the time, General Odierno. I wrote the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Martin Dempsey. and I wrote Admiral Mike Mullen because they had just switched who the chairman was, which is the highest ranking officer basically in the world. And I asked them, I said, can you please be at my husband's funeral? And so I also wrote President Bush and asked him if he would come. And so they all ended up coming except for President Bush. And so we had a ceremony at Arlington. But the second worst day of my life, I will say, is I had to fly my husband on Southwest Airlines to Arlington. So the military covers one authorized stop from Dover, Delaware to one place. So I had to fly my husband back home to Oklahoma, and then I had to pay to fly him to Arlington National Cemetery. And so they put him on commercial airlines with everyday people, and they put my husband in a white box with everyone's bags and cargo. And that was pretty horrific for me.
Wow.
So I did that. Yeah. And so I did that, and then we buried him at Arlington. And I remember the day we buried him, you know, it was just such a marathon of getting things done and doing what needed to be done every day. And I remember my family, it was the day that they were going to go back to Ohio and I was going to go to Oklahoma. And I remember my mom and sister coming in my hotel room, and it was probably one of the hardest things they ever did was leaving me. And I just started bawling, and they came back in about 5 minutes later, and they're like, we're going to stay. And I was like, no, you have to go. Like, I have to figure this out now. I have to figure out if I don't start swimming, I'm just going to drown. And so then I went back
you're
to
the
Oklahoma.
strongest person I know, Jane. Like, I'm just going to interrupt right now. You are the strongest woman I know. Okay, carry on.
And that's deeply humbling because you're the strongest woman I know.
I'm just the craziest woman I know with the most kids, you know. That's all, Jane. She came to my house for a couple of days when I'm like, you're welcome here anytime, but there's 7 kids and we're nuts here. I've heard a lot of this story before in the couple of years that I've known you, and yet this is like hearing it for the first time. It's like living it for the first time, imagining you carrying not only your only grief, but everybody else's grief, Chris's family, your family, his loved ones, his friends, the National Guard. And then you're within your right mind to reach out to the general and say, sir, you should be at this funeral, which he should, like 100%. I don't know that I invited anybody to my husband's funeral. I was lucky to get there. But unbelievable the way I love you said, it wasn't my time to grieve. It wasn't my time to grieve. It was my time to give Chris everything I had and make sure that was taken care of. That's remarkable. And just so many layers of strength there to set aside your own personal grief and make sure that this war hero was honored the way that he should be. It's incredible.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's hard to listen to the story. I mean, I'm choking back tears. Where are the tissues? We used to have tissues in this broadcast studio. They're never around anymore.
I'm sure I have some in my purse with the baby wipes.
But seriously, I've just really choking back the tears. I can feel the intensity of all of these things, having lost my husband, not in that way, but I can't imagine. There's so much more things that you have to manage and make decisions on, in addition to a civilian loss, you know. I can't imagine having to be so young too. How old are you at this time?
I'm 34.
No, when Chris died.
When Chris died.
Oh, I was 24.
24 years
so
old.
young.
You're so young.
And she's carrying the generals on her back. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah.
She is.
So
Jane,
amazing.
I love you. Let's take another break for a second. When we come back, Jane, I need you to teach the rest of us. What is resilience? What does it look like? What does it feel like? How do we get it? How do we keep getting at it? You're 10 years into this journey, this calendar year. It's not like you bury him and it goes away. It's not like you cry a few times and get over it. Like, let's talk about the decade that has now passed, because you have a lot to teach all of us. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back. We've got tissues. Michelle and I are both kind of a wreck in the studio here as we reflect on the life of this great man that neither of us knew and the sacrifice that he made so that we have the freedoms that we do. And I think we've just both, as Americans, as patriots, as citizens of this great country, Jane, we say thank you and we love you and we're sorry for your loss and we're so inspired by your story. Can you tell us, what is resilience? I mean, my dictionary, resilience, see Jane Horton, but define that, describe that. What's your resilience journey been like? When are you strong? When are you not strong? What's helpful? What has been kind of like the, oh my gosh, don't say or do that stupid thing because it's not helpful. Can you teach us for a few minutes what resilience looks like in your journey?
Yeah, I'm first of all humbled again to even be talking about resilience with you two amazing women. But to me, resilience is many things. And I would say the key to resilience is being real and being honest. And they say with grief, you're going to pay grief. You either pay it now or you're going to pay it later, but you're going to pay it. And so for me, I wanted to face it head on. I wanted grief and every emotion and everything I could I wanted to face it because that's also not only part of resilience in the grief journey, but it's also part of my love story. And I know you ladies get that, but when you lose a spouse, there's a different type of love that most people will never experience on this earth. And it's almost the most beautiful kind of love that there is, because it's the love when not only are our husbands the most vulnerable, that they not only trusted us in their lives, but they trusted us in their death to make the right decisions and to carry on their legacies and to tell people who they were and to paint the picture of what their lives were, but also, woo.
Yeah, we're all going to have to cry.
We're all crying.
Keep going, Jane. You're the only one able to talk right now.
But also when they can do nothing in return for us, Chris and Brent and Michelle, I'm sorry. I don't know your husband. John. They can't do anything for us anymore, but we can still do things for them. And that is the purity of love. And so that keeps me going. Also knowing that you will never know my husband. You will never know Chris Horton. And I will never know John, and I will never know Brent, but I will know them both off who they married. And I will know them based off of Jennie and Michelle. And to me, that is one of the most important things, is I'm the representation of my husband to the world. And I better do a good job at that because he was an exceptional man. And so that's what really keeps me going. Also my faith in the Lord, knowing that my husband is in heaven. Sometimes I'm like, I hope you're having a blast up there because it's great down here. Like, thanks a lot. Buddy.
I've totally thought that. I'm like, dude, my mansion better be ready. Like every room better be ready because you left me here. You left me on this sick planet. Oh my gosh, Jane, I've totally been there.
Yes. Yeah. It's a lot of fun with the masks down here and with, all the crazy people you left us with. Thanks a lot, honey. So
I love you.
Yep. But no, I know that he's safe. I know he's in heaven. And also I knew that this pain wouldn't be in vain. And I knew that God chose me for a special mission, just as he chose both of you. And what most people don't realize either is we've deployed about probably 3.2 million to Iraq and Afghanistan.
Whoa.
This year will mark about 20 years since we've been in the global war on terrorism. And so out of 3.2 million, we've lost about 7,500 in combat. And so that only leaves about 3,000 war widows over the past 40, 50 years. And so there's not many of us. And so I knew that, it took me years to share this because it's very personal. But I prayed a lot after my husband was killed because we were perfect for each other. And we were only together for 2.5 years. And it took me years to even understand how young we were and how much I've been through at such a young age and et cetera. And so I asked God, I said, God, why would you give me the love of my life so young and take him away so soon? Like, Chris was my soulmate. And one day I felt like God flipped it on me and he's like, I didn't give Chris to you. I gave you to Chris. Like, I knew Chris was going to give his life and I wanted him to have you to carry his legacy and to remember him. And it just kind of changed my perspective. And then my last comment on resiliency is it really is never giving up. And once you've been through your biggest fear, once you've been through the unthinkable, you just gain this level of courage and this level of resiliency that's kind of unknown to this world. Like, what else? If this didn't knock me off my feet, and if I'm still here today, bring it on. I will always bounce back up on my feet. And I think that's the key, is even during the darkest days, is remembering that the light will come and dawn will come and there will be better days ahead.
Oh my gosh, how many books are you going to write, Jane? Because I want to read every one of them. This is
such
I love
an amazing
that
story.
You've put words into my soul right now, Jane, because I do feel like I'm on a mission to represent Brent to the world and to make sure people know him and to give to him whatever I can give, even though he's gone, because he gave me everything. But I've never put that into words. I wrote that down. I'm the representation of my husband to the world. I'm going to put that on my wall. That's very good. And and I love the beautiful thought of God giving you to Chris, that he could have you for those last couple of years, and that strength in the last years since his physical life has been taken, that we know he lives on and his work lives on, and your combined work. I mean, I think of you and Chris, the Bible says we should be one in marriage, and I think, man, that's Jane and Chris for sure. He's the one not here, but I hear him in you. I feel like I kind of know him through you, and I love him through you. I can't wait till we all get to meet each other, and I'll say, man, you sure got lucky, bud, because you got a great wife. But I appreciate you sharing this, because I think this is a version of America that, like you put it in statistics, 3.2 million have deployed, which is less than the 1%. I mean, that's out of the 1% that even are in the military. Some of them have deployed, and fortunately, a very small number of them, relatively speaking, have been killed in combat, leaving a very small number, statistically, of war widows. But man, do we have a work to do then, Jane? And that's what I feel like you've taught me. From the moment I met you in the halls of Congress, you said that to me, like, I'm so excited to meet you because we've got work to do. And you've told me several times, God has work for me to do, when here I am floundering, feeling like I don't even know what day of the week it is in my grief. And you're constantly reminding me that God's going to give me strength, and God's going to not just give me strength to get through it, but he's going to put me to work through this, and he's going to make beautiful things happen. And if anybody in my local life has been impressed or inspired by anything I've been trying to do, it's because I met Jane Horton, and she told me, God told me I have to. So, but that strength that you give, and I know I'm not the only one that's been impacted that way by you. And I've said it 1,000 times, I just love you, Jane. Our world, our country, our nation is a better place because of you, because of your husband, because of your faith in God and your commitment to make sure these stories are told. I know you are tireless in telling other stories, like my husband's, like someone else's husband or sister or brother or son. And I just can't thank you enough. And I'm really serious when I say write the book, because a lot of us need to read it several times.
Oh, thanks, Jennie. Jennie, what's your middle name?
Kristen, just like my mom, kind of like my sister, same middle name of my sister-in-law. So we make it really easy.
Something to you, Jennie Kristen Taylor. So I don't even know what week it is. I don't even know what day it is. And that doesn't matter, because I have never seen a call on someone's life as strongly as I've seen on yours. And so for you to say these things about me is so humbling, because there's just this great mission on your life, and I'm so humbled to be a part of it, and I can't wait to see what it unfolds to be. And I just want you to know how incredibly special you are, and no matter what you try to do, that's never going to go away, because it's on your life and it's from God himself.
Well, I love you, Jane, and I wouldn't know that if you hadn't told me that a couple years ago, so thank you. I'm going to stop talking and crying and let Michelle say something beautiful and inspiring to wrap this up, because I'm just going to cry about how much I love this woman and admire everything you stand for and your sweet husband. I can't wait to meet him.
I don't know that I have anything inspiring to add to what you said. I mean, your story is powerful. It's impactful. It needs to be told. It needs to be heard. And I just really appreciate you coming on today and sharing such a beautiful story about such a young love. I'm heartbroken for you. He sounds like he was just amazing, awesome individual. and you were robbed. And I'm sure that at times you have felt that. And my heart just breaks for you. And I hear in your voice that you still have that connection with Chris. I'm sure there are times, I'm going to ask you right now, do you talk to him?
I don't know if I talk to him per se. I pray a lot. Sometimes I just do. Sometimes I do. I don't know that I necessarily. I don't know how to answer that. Yes and no.
Yeah. So, for me, I do it in different ways at different times. And there have been periods of time where I haven't actually verbally spoken. This last couple weeks, I've been dealing with some stuff. I've spoke out loud to him, and I feel like he has helped provide me answers and guidance. And, it's a beautiful story that you are dedicated to this man in such a way that you are living your life to carry his name and his memory forward. And it's just beautiful. Thank you for being on, for sharing with us today.
And everybody who's local, next time Jane's in town, we're going to get together, and hopefully it's past COVID, and we're just going to sit in a room and chat with her, because we're all going to come away stronger and better because of it. That was my one regret when you were here most recently, Jane, is that it is the pandemic and COVID and quarantine, and mass gatherings are very prohibited and limited right now. But when you come back, I'm going to rent the biggest venue we can. We're going to fill the hall.
Let's do it.
And you're going to tell the stories that inspire the rest of us.
I want to be there.
Because we love you.
I want to meet you in person.
Any gathering at your house, Jennie, is a mass gathering. So
that is so true.
Oh my gosh, we are such
I have been to her house. It is so amazing. Amazingly overwhelming.
Well, yeah, I was going to say amazing is a very nice way to put that superlative.
Amazingly
there. Thank you,
overwhelming.
Okay,
anyway.
Jane, we love you. Thank you. We'll talk again soon, and can't wait. Really, that is a very sincere invitation for a very meaningful event we're going to have just as soon as health conditions allow us to.
Thank you, ladies.
I will
that means a
volunteer
lot
to help with that. Well, thank you so much. If you are interested in our podcast, and if you like what you've heard, please subscribe for free and give us a rating and review. That really helps our statistics, helps us move up in the podcast world. If you or someone you know has a real story and they want to share with us, please send us an email at rrpodcast@ksl.com. You can find us on Facebook at Relentlessly Resilient. And remember, whatever you do today, remember to be kind. You have no idea the struggles others are dealing with in their lives.